drones as an example that we use over in our CACTIF for 30 complex. Most of those industry partners, when they want to develop their technologies, there's zero interest to come out in these types of lands. Their interest, of course, is until their products are being developed, they want to protect their proprietary information. They want to work with different folks on that. So a little bit different. It's done on a much smaller scale, of course, because they're trying to figure out what those technologies will bring. Everywhere from a weapon sight system from EOTech, who will come up here and mount a sight system on a small arms weapon, getting those soldier touch points, figuring out if that sight meets those capabilities with their night vision devices and all those other things. Those are all industry partner innovations that we work with, and we're trying to partner with some of our manufacturing and industry partners in Southeast Michigan specifically to bring those technologies to the warfighters here. I know I'm eating up all my time rapidly. 2 minutes is not long. He just gave me this. He just gave me the sign. And so building out, yes, that is using that term, an innovation ecosystem is something we are developing on the main part of camp to work with some of those industry partners. So I hope that answered some of your questions.
When you're talking about outside contractors coming on our property meaning state property, that's owned by the taxpayers of Michigan. Who's responsible for what they bring on the property? My concern is pollution.
Yeah, so could everybody hear his question? Okay, so I think a fair question. We're not allowing any companies to bring any type of products. We're not doing, I know some concern, of course, is with the PFAS, PFOA, the firefighting foam, the ARF stuff that was used in the bed. None of that stuff. Even in all these new areas, we're not bringing out those new technologies here. They're in our current areas of operation. Like I said, where we have those fenced-in areas. We signed memorandums of agreement with that go through the Attorney General's office. They review all of those, specifically the liability issue, right? The JAG lawyers from the military perspective look at everything from a liability perspective, as well as the Attorney General's office. So anything that comes here gets those reviews on what the thing is, and typically what we've seen, or any interest that I've seen, are focused on drone stuff, autonomous vehicle, electrification of how do you charge and go green with Army technologies and not use fuel. A lot of those different types of things are what we're primarily seeing, and those are the industries that we're using. There are some different artillery type rounds that'll be shot into the impact area, but it's more how do you have better precision type fires, if you will. So using current technologies but making them smarter through some of the technologies. So yeah, we're not interested and we vet that too. We want to have a military interest. Just as a quick example, I'm looking at not just Nike, so I don't want to say specific companies, but there's a handful of companies that are doing some very interesting technologies with wearables, having sensors in wearables. We're looking at that. Is there technology there that I could see soldiers' heart rates in certain areas? Can I see riding around in a vehicle in the desert and what that does to your biometrics? Can I see where all the soldiers are by just wearing a T-shirt? So a lot of, I know people will think, sometimes different things, but a lot of it is using technologies that might already exist, but looking at them from a different perspective, getting after some of those challenges we have. So I hope that, and we're very public with those companies we bring in. We put them all over, and they don't necessarily want to share their proprietary information, of course, as they're developing, but we work with them on our needs from a military perspective as well. But I think fair question.
So just as a follow-up too, any chemical use that they would do on short-term lease lands has to be vetted through us. So they have a lease agreement, we address it in there, but anytime they're going out, whether for invasives or any type of other chemical use, it has to be approved through our process. They have to have a commercial applicator that can actually do the work. And all of our short-term lease lands are certified through either the Forest Stewardship Council or the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. And we are limited to what type of chemicals that we can allow the usage on our property. So anytime that Great Lakes Energy wants to clear a right-of-way, they have to come through us and get an approval with the chemicals that they're using and the application rates. And all those are reviewed by our specialists. So the military would be no different in that regard.
Area 6 is a tourist destination. The warbler habitat is protected. The trout fishing requires more than just a river. It is one portion of a large ecosystem. So why does the DNR want to replace Pure Michigan with a military lease? I wonder who or what is benefiting from a military lease. Because it is certainly not northern Michiganders who will receive more noise, traffic, erosion, pollution from military vehicles that aren't required to follow federal emission standards, as well as road closures to our natural resources. The DNR says resources will be used for conservation and controlling invasive species. I cannot believe this is a major factor in their rationale, because invasive species eradication is nearly impossible to do. I believe the reasoning behind this proposal is much bigger and the level of involvement goes higher than our two guests here tonight. The governor's office communicated this is not a state issue. Contact your federal officials. Debbie Stabenow office communicated this is not a federal issue. Said to contact your state officials. No one is taking responsibility for changing the footprint of Michigan. Senator Gary Peters is a member of the Armed Service Committee. In 2019, at a hearing to reappoint General James McConville to grade of general and to be Chief of Staff of the Army, Senator Peters initiated questions that included a pitch for Camp Grayling to be looked at as a training area for upcoming new technologies. You might want to read this transcript. And no response has been received from his office. We are not being told the whole story, and this proposal goes higher up the chain of command to those in charge who are not taking responsibility, the governor and senators. In the end, these officials won't need to take responsibility either, because the decision for final approval of this proposal rests in the hands of the governor-appointed director, DNR director. I do not support this expansion. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't say question there either. My name is Jeff Balzer. I am president of the Michigan Trail Riders Association. The question I have is in regards to the equestrian trails across northern Michigan. Both of you, Colonel and Tom, I think you're both aware of the Shore to Shore Trail, which was dedicated by Governor Romney back in 1963 to forever be a riding and hiking trail. There's a sign if anybody wants to see it, Kalkaska Trail Camp, better known as Rapid River. The current base now is right in between our 4 Mile Trail Camp and our Goose Creek Trail Camp. We have 15 trail camps starting from Mackinac, going to Cadillac, from the eastern shore at Escoda to the western shore at Empire. The Michigan Trail Riders currently maintains over 500 miles of equestrian trails in northern Michigan. My question is, how will this expansion affect our trail system and the trail dedicated by Governor Romney in 1963?
So as I mentioned earlier, you know, the being put into the short-term lease lands, all uses that are currently available will continue to be available. The equestrian trails aren't gonna be closed, they're not gonna be restricted, they're not gonna be rerouted. You know, some of those trails, you know, the Louis grade and the county roads that you co-share. Again, that's why, you know, we appreciate getting the information for the shore to shore and the Michigan Trail Riders when you do your big ride. So when we have our annual meeting, those dates are provided to the camp. And it's like, these are the dates they're coming through, what training do you have? And then let's mitigate that, because I know the process that you guys go through, and we wanna make sure that everything is gonna go off without a problem and everybody is safe. So that's how we're gonna approach all the trails and anything that's in these potential areas. There won't be any restrictions, there won't be any closures. It's just another party that's able to use that. You know, and I know there's challenges with noise and, you know, horses being spooked and things like that. Again, that's why we bring that awareness to the military to say, hey, these guys are coming through. You do a pretty good job of letting us know timeframes. And, you know, we translate that to say, if you guys can limit it, then we work that way. It's no different than how we kind of work it with our logging operations, to try and move that equipment as far away as possible as we can to accommodate that ride going through. But the biggest thing, and unfortunately, it's the weakest link in a lot of things, is that communication. And you guys have done a very good job with that. And we do appreciate that. And you know, I strive to ensure that won't be impeded.
Thank you. Is that verbiage that you just stated right there gonna be written into the lease agreement?
Yeah.
It is now. It is currently.
Because when they shut the camp down permanently, the main camp was shut down for 4 weeks, or 3 weeks. Are you so certain to speak to that now? Really?
So the camp, yeah.
They were pretty strict on their rules. They wanted to use the mic and get in line. It's not my forum. And I'll be around afterwards, but I'll address your question, but I just want to be respectful.
Yeah, if we could hold any comments from out here, if you want to have a question, come to the line. And like you said, he will be here at the end to answer any questions. But if we could, you know, I know sometimes we're so passionate, it's hard to keep our question there. But please do, or come to the line, and you feel free to ask it up here.
Guys, first of all, let's thank everybody for coming out tonight. And can you have a quick show of hands, just for the record, how many people are opposed to this? I would say just about everybody here. So, the way that I look at this is, our township, and also before I start, is there any township elected officials here?
No, they weren't.
Any of ours?
Yes, there's one.
Thank you. So, the people of this community and our surrounding communities, all we have done is given to the military. You drive down our roads, the military has contributed to tearing them up. We have signs that say tank crossings. We have signs that say bombs and missiles will be fired over your roads at all times, day and night. Our trails are closed down. We don't have access to our lakes, our rivers, our natural resources. What are we going to get back from you taking more of our land? Also, the state pays taxes. I believe the last time, and Denny, I thought I talked to you about this years ago, the state pays 46 cents an acre to the township in taxes. You're going to lease from the state and take away our resources, shatter our windows, shake our foundations, and what are we going to get back out of this? I know a lot of people here, everyone that raised their hands, you're all optimistic that this isn't going to go through. But this is the federal government, and I guarantee you they're going to do what they want to do. What are you going to give back to the taxpayers, the community, and the people for giving up what we have already given up, and now you're asking us to give up more? What is your proposal to give back to our community and to help us out, since we have done so much to help you out through decades.
Okay, appreciate it, I guess. We of course, as the military, you will not find me ever question somebody's patriotism, right? Because we remember what the Vietnam generation went through. And so we depend on our community support. Now obviously you can be patriotic and still oppose this land use expansion. I'm not questioning that. But I will tell you, we're asking it for a reason. And sometimes I know when passions happen, things come out. And so what do we provide? You know, my job, my role is to provide the best trained forces I can, because they will be going against these challenges and these threats that we see. And so my job is to figure out how to send our men and women on deployments with those challenges and with those threats fully prepared. That's what I do. Why I'm asking for this land is specifically to get after and train for those effects. Yes, you guys are a community that lives near a base. Yes, you get to hear the sounds of the military training. You hear and feel the E-10s flying over and dropping the bombs right here near your backyard. You feel the tanks drive through and rumble the area. You feel our HIMARS when they shoot their rockets and make the loud noises. Your windows shake when we drop the 500-pound bombs at the impact area. Yes, and certainly we appreciate that because not all of our citizens in Michigan have that same opportunity. You know, I say tongue in cheek, and it's not probably going to be viewed the same in this group, but for us, that's the sound of freedom. And what are we providing? That's what my charge is to get after exactly that. So you'll never hear me talk about somebody's patriotism because everybody holds a spot of their patriotism in their heart and what they do. But those are the tasks I'm charged with doing. And so that's why I'm asking for this. And regardless, again, if you agree or disagree with the land use expansion, we're not taking over this land. We're asking to use it side by side with everybody else. We can't close down this type of a lease agreement. Those roads will remain open. They're not like our other types of lands where we do close roads for those safety concerns. When we close, Stefan Bridge Road and those other things, those are for the 1 in a million shot that one of our rounds would go somewhere else, and that's why we shut those roads down for that safety. So these types of lands are not like that. These types of lands, ideally, we have public interaction with what we're doing. You know, you see troops camping out there and doing things with their antennas, and wherever we deploy in the world, we have to work with the public, right? The Ukrainians right now are feeding intelligence and other things to their fighters in Ukraine. So those are the things that we need to train with and work with our public, and ideally with a smile on each other's faces. So I get it. I understand that you all have paid a greater burden and price than other communities, that's for sure. And I can just tell you, we're appreciative of it. And there's not hardly a town I can go in around here with this uniform on without somebody thanking me for my service. And so I never want to jeopardize that. We appreciate that. And I understand the concerns, and we're going to try and mitigate those concerns absolutely where we can. But please understand what I'm charged with doing.
With all due respect, General, that
Sir.
wasn't the answer to the question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And so, maybe as a tag-along then to the previous commentary, since that's been pretty well enunciated on the sacrifices of this area, and not to mention the prevalence of special natural resources, the North Branch among them. I think I heard you speak about liking the area enough that you were thinking about relocating as well. But in the spirit of being a good neighbor, and Mr. Barnes as well, one of the quotes that I heard from a gentleman with the DNR in June of 2014 was encouraging in that he was suggesting that the DNR was committed to listening to their constituents and absorbing their feedback. I hope that's still the case. And Colonel, perhaps in the effort of being a great neighbor, knowing that we can only assume that the kinetic energy in range 40 is going to increase. Why don't you remove Area 6 altogether and use scheduling and logistics and take advantage of the other areas that you have along with the other areas you're seeking? Thank you, sir.
Was there a question? Scheduling and logistics, I think that's a fair question. And it's also fair because I think sometimes there's assumptions that we're gonna use every acre of this land simultaneously at any given time. That's not true, right? There are, and so I know there becomes confusion with the public, when you talked about the Detroit Business article earlier, when you talk about, you have all this land that's not always being used at the same time. That will be true for this as well. We are specifically looking at this land use expansion so I can send smaller formations out to greater distances to replicate that distance of effect as they train. So we are not looking at massive formations of troops. Frankly, I'm not interested in that. We maintain our max capacity on the base of 8 to 10,000 at max. So this will spread out those troops. If anything, you would see less of them in other state areas, if you will. But it's giving us the ability to get out those distances. So there might be 40, 50, 60 troops in one area for 2 nights, and then they'll transition to another area far away. And so it's trying to get those effects with distances, not that every acre of all those square miles are being used simultaneously. That's not happening. That's not the intent. That's not what you're going to see. Ideally, you'll hardly see any influx increase at all. These smaller formations are, not your big tracked vehicles and those other things. Part of the lease agreement is for wheeled vehicles, small formations, ground troops walking, camping, setting up antenna arrays, hopefully camouflaging themselves well so it's difficult to see from space, providing electronic effects on their capabilities to see how they then will mitigate, or how then they will operate and move towards those kinetic operations in those other parts of our land. So these are not massive formations going into every acreage, but it gives them that flexibility of maneuver to go here one night, and then down to area one or 2 nights, and just giving us those range of capabilities. We are not looking at a huge influx of soldiers coming in for these exercises because of how we manage those exercises. So I hope that mitigates some of those concerns. I know when you ask for all these acreage, you say you're not using all the acres you have now. That at different times and different locations, that's certainly true. Right? It's for specific times, specific training exercises, rotating those forces around to get that greater distance. So I hope that helps answer some of those questions.
I don't have an answer, Kathy, I don't know if it would be possible if people have written questions or statements that they read, if I could get a copy of that, or if you want to leave them with me, then I can get those submitted. That would probably be the simplest to help me pass that on.
Hi folks, I'm Glenn Eberly. I'm with the South North Branch Area Foundation, and I must say that I've had some communication with Colonel Myers and Tom Barnes over the last few weeks, and they have responded in kind. I have not been happy with the answers, but they've responded. I appreciate that, and I think there's many folks in this area who are still of the opinion that what you are requesting is a want and not a need. And I am asking the DNR to validate the fact that this land is in fact needed. And I have some questions I'd like to ask. First of all, could you hold that? This. This is from the Camp Grayling Maneuver Training Center Integrated Natural Resource Plan back in 2002-2006. And what I want to show you is, let me put this up. What I want to show you is this is a map of the current, this is a map of the current plan. Yeah, thank you. This is a map of current Camp Grayling. And it goes from Otsego all the way to Kalkaska. That's, now, we were hearing it was 148,000 acres. That's difficult to understand. But what it represents is 231 square miles. That's a heck of a lot of land. And Shannon Lott even made the statement at the meeting on 6/22, that's a lot of land. Folks, we have not been responded to with a need. This land is not being used all the time. Colonel acknowledged that. There are troops in and out, but that land is not being used. I think that the questions we have to ask are need to be answered for the people of Michigan. And I will add, hold it back. And let me ask the question now. Why can't the National Guard use current available tools such as scheduling, geographic separation, geofencing, spectrum range, and other reasonable measures to perform intended electronic warfare training and traditional troop training within the existing management area footprint of 231 square miles? Question 2, how much land is required to perform electronic warfare training, and how much distance is needed between regular troop training and electronic warfare training? I think these are both valid questions, and answering those would at least go towards justifying the need as opposed to the want. And I expect Tom Barnes, I would think the DNR would be asking these kind of questions. I don't think they should have to come from the public. I think the job of vetting this request is on the shoulders of the DNR. And if it's needed, so be it. But I think that we want those questions asked and answered. Thank you very much.
No, I think that's a good question. Yes, we are not, and it is difficult for me to answer only because, some of the answer, and I'm not even looking at Glenn right now because he doesn't like the answer, is depends. How much land is required to perform electronic warfare training? And those other things that you talked about, the geofencing, the spectrum, all those things we do now. All those things we train, and on certainly a much smaller exercises we do now. Even for our upcoming Northern Strike exercise, which is going to bring a lot of noise in a couple of weeks, we are absolutely utilizing those things now. We absolutely schedule everything in advance for those training things. We coordinate with the DNR when necessary, or with other elements when are necessary. We absolutely are looking at these lands for that space of distance away. So when you're looking at the square miles, you try and calculate how much does an infantry battalion, take up as far as space. They can maybe, ruck so many kilometers in a day and set up their tents, and how does that equate to 162,000 miles? That's kind of difficult to put into a context, because what we're trying to do is get out to those different spaces. So any given time of that 162,000 acres, you may only see a few hundred acres being used for any particular day. Right? It's traveling to those, remote areas. It's seeing those effects in those areas. So that footprint, that geo footprint, the electronic warfare type stuff, that might be a fairly small footprint, from me to the end of the road here. And then 2 days later, we're packing up that organization and moving them to another footprint. So I know sometimes it's when you say that, how much space do you really need? Can you mitigate that with scheduling? What we're trying to do is get after those effects from long distances, while all those other things are going on with that multi-domain operation that I kind of talked about earlier. How are you, communicating with the Air Force and the Army and all those types of things? So I can understand the hesitation and some of those things, but we're not bringing in large formations occupying all of these 162,000 acres simultaneously. There's zero intent or appetite, or even, I can't imagine the exercise that would do that. What we're actually doing is utilizing technologies where we can have simultaneous exercises. So if we're training a division size element, so something, with 20, 30,000 individuals, how can we train a brigade here, 5 to 10, 5 to 8,000 here, simultaneously what's happening in Fort Irwin, California, simultaneously what's happening down in Louisiana, simultaneously what's happening in JMRC in Germany. So it's not bringing in thousands of more troops. It is how can we tie those effects together, working all those domains. So we're not looking at, it's not a land square acreage management thing. It's how we are able to conduct the different types of training. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and the proposal was given to the director, and I go off of his direction. So at the time it was provided, he saw the need to continue to entertain it. So with my management, with my area, I have a span of control. There are things that come across my desk, whether it's someone looking for an easement across state land, whether it's an oil gas wanting to set up for exploration. That's within my span of control that I can go through, and it is. It is what is the need? Is it a want or a need? And that is part of my vetting process, but I'm just one silo of the DNR that goes through that. Any of these, if we get, or when we get, however you want to phrase it, if it gets turned down, we don't get there. But if it continues, every division will have to have that same understanding of the need versus a want. And they will weigh in, and it will weigh in on whether it's from fisheries, from wildlife, from parks and rec. So we are going through that process. That is part of the vetting process, but you also have to understand, someone talked earlier, what trickles downhill? Well, I'm there, I'm in the blue toilet. But that's how it works. And that's part of my job is to, lend the expertise that I have locally to those processes, but also to get the information back to the director and to our executive management. And, Glenn, we are looking through that, and I don't think the director would make a decision if there wasn't in his mind a need, and that will be with him.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. My name's Brandon. I'm a current new member of the Lovells Township Fire Department here. But my question and concern is going to be for not just me, but for all of the property owners around here that have property that's now going to be surrounded by state land that is currently going to be run by the military. I'm actually currently a property owner, and my property is going to be surrounded on all sides by this state land that is going to be run by the military. So, can you guys guarantee that if, say, on a certain day you're going to have a military drill, if we're not going to have access to get out to the said property? All of these roads are right in the mix of this new area that I want to be taken over. But I don't want to try to go out to my property one day and be turned down by a string of military personnel.
Thanks, Brandon, and thank you for your service on the fire department. Like I had mentioned earlier, the roads aren't going to change as far as open, close, with, if anything, that's added to it. These are short-term lease lands. We don't have mechanisms in place for those to be closed. The closures that we currently have, which is in the long-term lease lands, those will stay status quo. And that's another thing. If we need to put that in writing and put it within the lease agreement, I have no problem with that. As the colonel mentioned, if we ever get to that point, that will be a lot of discussion on what's going to be in and what's not. And again, that will come out to the public for your guys' input so you can see, what's going to be in the language. So I don't foresee any of that happening. It's going to be status quo. They've assured us that, and like I said, if we need to put it in, it will be in the lease agreement.
Yeah, we're not, this type of land, we're not shutting down anything. There's no trail closures. Now, certainly, you all feel the effects of areas that we do that, and that will stay the same for those different events that we're doing. But this type of area, if you go out and look at our current short-term lease areas towards Kalkaska County, those areas are not closed ever. There's never a trail or a road that gets closed over there. So that's the same type of of training for these areas as well.
Hello, my name is Greg Welser, lifetime resident. I've witnessed what the military's done my whole life, you know, and they've closed roads when they want to, fenced off areas when they want to, and I keep hearing all this about electronic warfare and nothing else. Well, these maps, I've seen multiple spots where they're talking about impact zones. Right down the street from us, back in range 30 and 40, there's a lake there, and the river eventually goes to the East Branch and into the main branch of the Asabo. I'd like to know what studies have been done on the heavy metal pollution from all them bombs going off, and where these other potential impact zones are going to be, because you're including not only the Asabo and Manistee, which are already impacted, now you want to include the Muskegon River Basin down all the way to Houghton Lake, all the way up to Otsego Lake, all the way over to West Twin Lake. You know, I would like to see some studies on the pollution that's already been done. I think you've proven yourself not to be very good stewards, and to add another 250-something square miles of land, you know, I mean, I'm patriotic as they come, believe me. I just don't think there's this need. You talked just now, Colonel, about connecting with these other bases. Now, if you're connecting with bases 1,000 miles away, why do you need another 10 miles of distance on ends of our base? I just don't see any reason for it. Zero. And that's the end of my statement, and thank you for your time.
Good evening, my name is Randy Long. I'm a resident here in Lovells. I'm also on this is going to be a positive note for you, Colonel. The committee for, you might recognize, we're having a bridge walk here in town. And we've always extended to the Colonel and the base to come out and join us, and he's always been very grateful in doing that. He sent troop presentations out, and we've welcomed them every year, and we're doing that again this year, so I need to talk to your PR department next week, okay? Now, on a side note, though, my team is always asking me to get a flyby or a helicopter to come in and drop in at the noon time when we have our parade. I know that we don't want to tie up anybody and any equipment doing that kind of thing. But I do got to tell you, they did it 31 years ago on our very first one. They flew by. So there's a positive note. I'm sure that it wasn't under your realm back in the day, but that's the positive side of it. I want to address a couple of things. Make sure you're talking to your local township boards. This board here at Lovells, I'm not on it. I attend the meetings. They are ready to set a resolution and put out 3 major objections to at least where the resolutions of what the camp is proposing at this time. It would be grateful that you show up and voice your opinion to the boards, all of the boards in the local region area, that they may also address then the DNR and the Colonel. 3 of those major items that they came up with opposing is the majority of the land. And I've just heard you say, and what you're talking about is small groups of tactical, anywhere from could be 20 to 80 in a group coming out to a specific area. If I'm, not quoting you, but getting it right. And I wonder in what most people call the land grab of the 162,000 acres. If something with the DNR and yourself couldn't be worked out more logistically, if you need some space and placing in that point, that, if you need 40 to 80 acres, that you just pick those points out and ask for that kind of spacing across the whole designated area, rather than the ratio of the amount of people you're using, 40 to 60 people, in that kind of an area. For area 6, I could see more of a quadrant sections just being picked out and being approved, possibly by the DNR, where those locations would be to give you those spot movements. Because in 100 acres, you could be in this corner this time. Thank you. And the next time you could be in a different corner. Just an idea on that. I'd also like to address the MOA that I've run across, which is a memorandum of agreement that you already have with VMS, which is a private company to deal with, already signed contract, to deal with the outside private vendors coming in to use this, as you spoke of earlier. Thank you.
Well, I guess it's my turn. My name is Glenn R. Blackwood, and I'm here representing the Rough Grouse American Woodcock Society, all of our constituencies across the United States. I want to first by saying, Colonel, we support the military, as well as Tom, we support our long-term partnership with you doing habitat conservation work in this area. I had 3 questions. One was access, that's been asked and answered. My second question is, as we go forward and we have partnerships with the DNR, will the DNR reach out to conservation partners, whether it's RGS, AWS, Wild Turkey Federation, TU, Anglers of the Asabo, whose constituency has invested dollars into conservation projects on this property? And secondly, have any of these dollars or these properties been funded with Pittman Robertson dollars that have come through that may be issues going forward? So with no other questions, I'll shut up. Y'all know I'm long-winded, so.
Can you expand on the question?
The first part of the question is, as you come across 612, there's several habitat projects that we've collaborated with you folks, Wild Turkey Federation, RGS, AWS, that are now going to be a part of this. And our members' dollars, our fundraising efforts, along with you folks, have done that. Just as, RGS, AWS just got the $200,000 wildlife habitat grant for Huron-Manistee on the other side of the state. So as we go forward looking at this, we have a financial investment into these properties through collaboration, through long-term partnerships that we want to go forward. But yet, no one's asked, to my knowledge, for us to have a seat at the table to look at this program top to bottom. And we would relish that on behalf of RGS and AWS. Thank you.
So to answer your question, the management that we have currently will continue as is. So, all our forest management won't change because of the lease agreement, just like it hasn't changed in the short-term lease or the long-term lease. Some of my more aggressive grouse habitat management is in the long-term lease lands, and it'll continue to be that way. We value that partnership, and it'll continue to go that way. I'm very much, I was almost late today because my 16-week-old pup decided to play hide and seek with me today. Of all times, I was like, well, maybe it would take an hour and a half, and I didn't get here today. But she came back, so I was happy. But, I have a vested interest. I'm a big bird hunter. Part of the luxury of having this job is, I get to kind of put my twist on the management here, and I'm all for the young forest and the grouse and the woodcock are what I enjoy going after. Second to that is I have a drift boat, a longboat, kayaks, and I love to be on the river. So, all the projects that we have worked with Trout Unlimited, with Rough Grouse Society, the food plot establishments with Wild Turkey Federation in conjunction with the camp, all that will continue, and we look forward to expanding that. Have we officially reached out to people? No. Is that a misstep? Probably in this process, but and this is an open invitation, that we would gladly sit down and meet with you anytime you would like. Thank you.
And then I think there was an earlier question, what can you practice? This is one of the few things that we think we can take advantage of federal resources. So anytime we have areas that are designated as the ability for us to train. Now again, DNR is maintaining this. We're actually asking for access right alongside of every other access. But environmental dollars from the feds are one thing that we do receive in areas that we train. So expanding those capabilities. Now there are specific grants within training areas to go after resources. That is one area that we think there's an opportunity of expanding that. Same with managing trail systems. for the side-by-sides and the snowmobiles. If they're within areas that we consider training areas, now I can bring in federal resources to take advantage of some of that. So there's not a lot of things with this big ask. I'm asking, for a lot from the community, that's for sure. But there is a handful of smaller resources like trail management, like environmental habitat dollars and things that we now would have an opportunity to go after like we do with some of our other lands. So, thank you.
I'm Laura Butler. Been a permanent resident for the last 6 years, but in 1970 I spent my honeymoon up here, so I've been around for a while. I got 4 questions. I don't really expect answers, but I want you to be aware. My husband and I are private pilot owners. We can't even fly around our cabin because of restricted airspace. So is this new space going to be restricted also? Okay. As far as the trail riders, I'm an alumni Michigan trail rider, but there are times that private individuals come up, bring their horses up, and they're not associated with any organized group. So what do you do with those people? We brought our horses up, picketed in our backyard, and rode the trails all weekend. How are you going to make them safe? Okay? Another thing is, how can you guarantee that when the military's up here, that the trails are going to be closed at both ends? My favorite rock picking spot is out here, and military was up there, and the trail was open, so I went out there. And I went out the other end, and the trail was closed. Okay? Another thing is this land increase. Can this be put on a ballot that we can vote for?
So real quick answers, restricted airspace, no. FAA, of course, manages that. We are asking for no additional length of restricted airspace. There is an area of our airspace that caps out at 9,000 feet over current restrictions that we're trying to elevate to 23,000 feet, but no greater distance of restricted airspace for we have. We do intend to maintain our restricted airspace, however. Horse riding, the trails will be open the same, mitigating that risk. We try and put out communication to the public, follow our Facebook and LinkedIn and Insta and all those other things. We also are on, Q100 radio every week. We try and get out the message of when and where we're training at, and any closures or road closures that are happening are on those announcements. So we ask that people share that as much as possible. But none of these areas, once again, will we be permitted to close the roads. There's no fencing, there's no permanent structures, there's no road closures in this type of area. It's utilizing that space right alongside you all. So no, our other areas, absolutely, we do close roads. We do that for safety reasons, for those 1 in a million offshoots or those types of things. We will continue to do that in those areas, and we announce those through those other means. So I ask you, if you don't follow or you're not getting our public service announcements, we push those out every week. There's an update one every week that tells you exactly what areas will be closed for those roads and stuff. So we hope that kind of helps.
What about the ballot?
Oh, wait a minute.
That's not.
You don't know trail riders.
It is.
Trail riders eat, sleep, and drink horses. They aren't concerned with military. That's all they think about. I think I can safely say for anyone into horses. They're not going to check somewhere to see the military's in there.
Yeah, it's, the use of our public lands. I mean, you could have the same occurrence of a group of side-by-side users using that same area that the trails are on, or mountain bike riders up at the same time. This is another use that's under our purview that people may encounter in the woods. We're opening up more of the camp to the ORVs, and we have a plan laid out. But it goes back to the same concern I have with my bird dogs and them running out into a road and a side by side hitting them, or someone on their Jeep. We do have things in place for, you know, organized events that we like to know about. We ask people to get permits so we know what's going on, so we can at least get it out there to make sure that we're not having, you know, that safety conflict. But we have logging operations, we have oil and gas exploration, we have all kinds of activities that are going on at multiple times, and if it comes into that place that you're there, we ask everybody to be respectful of that trail and of that use. You know, so that's the safety is, it's always the safety of anything. You know, when you're out there with your horse, you have to ensure that that horse is acclimated and can respond, just like I have to be responsible for my dog. If it runs off and gets hit by a car, I'm not gonna blame the guy. Yeah, I'll be pissed off, but it falls back on my shoulders. So that's, you know, part of that aspect out there. You know, and I hunt quite a bit on the military land, so, you know, that's always in the back of my mind. The ballot issue, again, as I mentioned earlier, if you want this changed, that's how you would change it. It is not eligible for a ballot. With our processes within the state of Michigan and within the DNR, land changes or land decisions fall with the director of the DNR. And whether you agree with that or not, I'm not gonna debate that point because I can't do anything about it. But that's where you, as a collective whole and the voices can, if you can get that changed, whether, and I don't know, it would be an administrative rules opening and looking at the legislation to get something changed with that. So that's your power, and that would be the mechanism to go if you wanted to put something like this on the ballot. That's the only vehicle that we have right now. The processes that we're in now, any of these land changes and land decisions fall with the director of the DNR.
Gentlemen, my name is David Owens. We have a place on the road. My question is more directed. My question is directed more toward process, if you will. I don't have the expertise to even think accurately about how the military carries its burden and executes its mission. But I am interested in how rules are issued. And I took a moment to copy some things. This is from the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, which establishes the DNR and how the DNR operates. In Michigan Compiled Laws 224.5031, I'm going to bore everybody by reading a bit of a statute. Quote, before issuing an order or promulgating a rule under this act that will designate or classify land managed by the department for any purpose, the department shall consider, in addition to any other matters required by law, all of the following. A, providing for access to and use of the public land for recreation and tourism. B, the existence of or potential for natural resources-based industries, including forest management, mining, or oil and gas development on the public land. C, the potential impact of the designation or classification of private property in the immediate vicinity. Those are all the requirements that are in that statute. Contrary to that, at least in my opinion, the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, that is Camp Grayling, has promulgated a fact statement, which is on the DNR's website, that says, the newly proposed training areas, if approved, would be used for periodic low-impact activities such as drone operation, cyber, electronic warfare, space and communication system installation and operation. So my question is, how can the use, as proposed by the DMVA, which I just read, be reconciled with the statutory mandate set forth in section 5031, which has only 3 items of authority that the DNR has? That's my first question.
He wasn't paying attention.
Okay, I'll read the next one fast. Section 503.15, I just went through 1, provides. 15, the department may lease lands owned or controlled by the department, or may grant concessions on lands owned or controlled by the department to any person for any purpose that the department determines to be necessary to implement this part. So, my question is, in what way or interpretation of this law Is the purpose and use as proposed by the DMVA necessary to implement Part 503 of Act 451 of 1994? Thank you.
So as I mentioned when you handed it to me early, David, it will be something that will get passed up to our legal department because that is not in my span of control, nor do I want it to be in my span of control. So, you know, and again, you know, I go off of our past history that this has been, we've had leases put in place, some granted from 1935, but the most recent of 1985, where I'm sure these laws were applicable, and at that time it was reviewed. But I can assure you that if this gets to that point, our Attorney General's office will be going over this. I know the TAG's attorneys will be going over it, and it will be vetted through. But again, this will be going to the Deputy Director and Director.
Good afternoon. Thanks to the Township for holding this. Cops left already. I was going to shout out to those guys who tried in the warm weather. I grew up in northern Michigan, south end at Siegel Lake. In 1960 was when I first became acquainted with the military. I've lived up here since. I got a couple of money questions for you, Mr. Myers. How much is your annual budget at Camp Grayling?
What was the question?
How much is the annual budget at Camp Grayling?
It's a number. It's a difficult question, and the only reason I say that is it varies every year, and it varies by exercise. So as an example, the Northern Strike exercise this year will bring the budget's $23 million just for that 2-week period of the budget. Our budget for next year, we did win a congressional ad for a $16 million facility out at the airfield. So when I answer a question like that, the budget's difficult because there are pieces of that budget that are directed that I only use in certain manners. There's personnel budgets on how many people I can hire. There's state budgets. There's exercise budgets. There's those types of things. So overall budget, it's a difficult because there's different people that manage that budget that I don't get. Specifically, I am not a program manager for any budget. So Colonel Myers does not authorize the expenditure of anything. It falls on those program managers who are either exercise folks out of Lansing, training division folks out of Lansing, building and construction folks, that directors out of Lansing as well. So there's different pieces and different program managers who absolutely have an impact on what our asks are, but we manage zero budget at the camp.
I asked that my time be stopped in the middle of the dissertation because the follow-up question is how much did you spend here in Lovells as a percentage of your overall budget?
And again, you know, difficult to answer. We contract out a lot of our services. Just as an example, I bring up that Northern Strike exercise. That contract, if this is a hint for anybody who wants to get in the porta-john business, for that 3-week period was about $600,000 contract just for the use of porta-johns. We contracted with local food vendors throughout the area, providing contracted meals at $2.1 million with 3 different contracts that were let. All local folks jumping on that contract. So for me to specifically look at a community, that's not how, of course, it works. We contract, the fire department at the city of Grayling for, a few $100,000 to provide crash rescue support at the camp or the Grayling airfield. We contract with the Frederick Fire Department, who does our fire department services on the. So it depends on who bids on those contracts, those communities that go after that involvement. So it varies annually, but so put a price on what we bring to the community. It depends.
So I'm going to take that as pretty close to zero. How much does it cost Lovells to have 612 operational? And how much of that repair is paid for by the military? The answer again is that is zero. Okay?
When we talk about money, we talk about procurement. Where's the procurement at in Camp Grayling? It's in Lansing. Where's the money at that's in Camp Grayling? It's in Lansing. Why isn't it here? Okay, I'd like to propose, similar to the marijuana thing that everybody disagrees about, to give a stipend to the townships that are affected by this proposal. If it's pushed down and down the road. And let the township officials here agree to spend that money where it's needed in replacement for the strife that they've cost us. The second area I would like to discuss is with you, Tom, and that's control. We are okay, he took 4.5 of mine. We are at a point where we have no control over what the DNR does, and what I'm proposing is that we take representatives from Bear Lake Township and Lovells and integrate them into the DNR Camp Grayling task force that meet once a year, so they can adequately and accurately represent what you and I feel every day. That's actually it's not more than a request, it's almost like a demand, okay?
I know you took up more time, but we do have a base community council. We meet just about monthly. There are representatives from various townships. Your county commissioners come out. When we get MEDC there, or the Department of Transportation there, we try and look at those areas of agreement. Currently, we're not on an agreement tonight, but we look at.
You just are.
Yeah, fair enough, but we look together at those areas, endorse different letters of support for those different communities that are working on different things. So, there are community reps that attend that base community council meeting. We instigated that as from the installation side, but members are welcome to attend that as well, as we look at those new initiatives and things that the surrounding community can agree upon on other initiatives. So we'll leave the land use talk out of that one, but there are certainly other initiatives that we look at for the Northern Michigan communities and resources that we try and come together with resources to pull together.
Thank you. And once again, if you could hold your comments, if you're sitting here, you can come back here, get in line as the other folks are to make your comment.
Hi, everyone. Sandy Schmidt out of Lewiston. You have talked about your plans for training and the military operations on this proposal of this additional land. What about outside vendors outside of Michigan? I believe this gentleman alluded to. Are there plans for that? What will they be doing? Is there a contract that already exists? And how do you regulate?
Like I said, we do have outside industry partners that come in and use and work alongside our soldiers right now. It doesn't necessarily mean we contract and procure things through them, right? Sometimes we want an effect. Sometimes there's a company right now we're working with Northern Strike, this year's exercise, that can identify RF signatures in an area. What that means is when you carry around your cell phone or you talk on a radio, it provides a signature. We're seeing other countries jump on that technology and target our troops now. So we bring in an outside industry. It might be from out of state. It might be from, there's companies from Arizona, California that have some technologies that we're working with, bringing us that effect. So when the troops are training, I can tell them how quickly, just by carrying around their cell phone, they could potentially be targeted. And then how do you train differently? How do you mitigate that risk? How do you turn off all your radios, not carry your cell phones in your pocket, because even when they're off, they still provide a signature. There's all these other things that we're working with those partners to come in and do that. So when I talked about trying to use other than taxpayer dollars for some of our solutions, that's exactly what we're trying to do. If I go and procure something, yes, I'm spending military monies on a solution for one of our challenges. If, however, I can take advantage of other than taxpayer dollars to get after those same effects, I'm trying to get that effect for the troops. So I hope that answers your.
Service providers, it is not training from outside of
No.
coming in.
Oh, you're talking about training, like okay, yeah, we.
Not service providers, I get that.
Okay, so we absolutely. I'll throw the Northern Strike example. I brought the sheet here so I don't forget. Starts in just a couple of weeks. As a reminder, appreciate your patience with the exercise. This will be a larger exercise. Think of what we've had, back in the 90s, probably close to 8,000 troops up in the area. We'll have National Guard organizations from 19 different states. We'll have active duty, special forces, United States Air Force, Air National Guard. We will have the United States Marine Corps at about 1,000. We'll have United States Navy Reserve. We'll have about 300 partner forces from different countries. This year we've got the Brits coming from obviously the UK, Latvia Special Forces will be training here. Canadians will be coming in here. There's another Hungarians are going to be training with us. So whenever we go anywhere in the world, we depend on allied partners, and we have to figure out how to communicate, how to train with, what effects they can bring, what things we share and don't share necessarily with them. But we absolutely bring in different allied partners to train alongside us.
Hi, my name is Heidi Fanoff. I own property and live nearby a proposed expansion area. I wanted to make sure to let you know that when I posted the link for the where you can put comments on a local page, not many people that live in my area were aware of it. So if you're not, on Facebook or connected with a lot of folks, you may not even be aware of what's going on. So I would recommend the DNR put more public outreach and maybe do a direct mail to anybody who's adjacent or in the vicinity of the proposed expansion areas. I want to also make sure to remind folks, these are the Osable and the Manistee. They're wild and scenic rivers, and that's something that I know the DNR cares a lot about, and I'm sure we all do too. And the preservation and restoration of those resources are so important and doesn't just happen within the 150 feet. It's the whole watershed that's impacted. So one of the things in the plan mentioned disruptions of electronic devices that might impact adjacent property owners. I'm wondering if there's going to be any impacts, like say you have to, you disrupt some electronic stuff. Is that going to mess up, our cell phone service, our Wi-Fi signal when we're at home? A lot of us rely on satellite and cellular service in this area. And I would also like to say that, it has mentioned before, some kind of citizen place at the table for the community who's impacted, I think is really important. So for the DNR, and I'm directing this to the DNR because the DNR is really who represents us in this right now, we need to have a seat at the table where the community can be heard and, can be a partner in whatever plans are put forward. I hope there aren't any leases, but if there are, I sure hope they are not 20 years. They are short term, they are smaller areas, a 15th of the size of what's currently proposed, that it's shorter term so that we can, folks can prove to the community that this is really what you say it is. Because 20 years and just, go ahead and do what you want, that's not going to give us a lot of comfort. Also, a lot of this stuff happens over the weekends. These are a lot of times when folks are using the space. So how are we going to make sure that we're not impacting folks using the space? Let's think about that as well. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Dave Curtis. I have a place on Lake Marguerite, obviously. Thank you. And pay $15,000 in taxes each year. And the reason I want to say that is for the fact of some of the things that have happened at the lake. A lot of changes in the last many years. And actually, I want to thank Colonel Myers because in the last few years, many great things have happened. He's making some very nice changes. But with those changes, I'm going to point some questions to the gentleman on his left. And I would like to warn you people that Mr. Myers is not the person, he's not the bad guy here. He's looking to protect us, right? I think we can all agree with that. If you don't want this to happen, if this gets further to Dan Eichinger, it'll never be stopped.
Just know that. When we talk about access, and that's it, the access is the piece that I want to talk about and the question I'm going to have. Many, many years ago, 30 years ago, we come to our same cottage, ride our snowmobiles, do our thing, ride across the lake, go to the camp, on and on. Endless trails, endless recreation, all great. Wonderful experiences with the military, was fantastic. Then along comes 2011, we all know what happened there, but up goes the fence. Now the fence, the DNR officers, the police officers, non-stop. You can't fart over there without somebody on your tail, and it's ridiculous. And when we talk about the access, we talked about the no-fly zone. I can't fly a drone this big on Lake Marguerite to take pictures of my children learning how to ski because it's a restricted air zone, okay? That may seem funny, but check it. It's true. It's true. See, but then here's the problem. Now it's more than half, trust me, because I've tested it. and I've gotten the call, okay? And Colonel, please, all due respect.
I believe you.
All due
I was
respect.
just trying to figure out.
I know you are,
Something
and this is my problem, right? You're trying to do what's right for the people. I wholeheartedly believe that. I believe that with all my heart. The DNR is the bureaucracy of your life that you will not win a fight against ever. I'll guarantee it. And they will do things. All respect to you too, sir. You talked about your silo. You have a small silo and a huge bureaucracy. My question is to you, how can you, just as I asked earlier, with such certainty, tell us that you're not going to take the other group of the other silo of the DNR is not going to put all them, I want to say this, those trail markers that say do not enter, no RV, no nothing, on state land. Tell us that, please.
So to answer your question about the road closures, that is all a process. Public Act 288 came out in 2018. Prior to that, all forest roads in Lower Michigan were closed unless posted open. So when 2018 came out, when it was legislated that the forest roads were going to be open to ORVs, that's when another process of the bureaucracy came into place. So any recommendation for roads gets vetted through the local office, and that gets all put up into a public viewer and a public comment session every year. Requests have to be in by, I believe it's August 28th, and those go through our 30-day public comment. And that's your chance to get onto the public viewer, submit your questions or your suggestions to the local office and saying, hey, I think this trail road needs to be open, or no, I don't think this trail road needs to be open because people are trespassing on my property. Whatever your comment may be, that all gets reviewed. It goes through the local. I pretty much, I don't have a dog in the fight with the quads. I have one. I bought one in 2001, and I live right next to the south part of the 30 complex, and that's when I found out that I couldn't ride my quad into there. Mistake on my part. But so it is a process. So for the roads within my unit.
But that process doesn't stop here, right? So you can't say with certainty to this group that there will be no closure. You cannot say that. Is that fair?
Yes. We can put it into the lease. Yes.
But
yes.
You can guarantee it's not going to change.
Well, I'm not going to say I can guarantee it's not going to change. I can say in the lease, in the period of that lease, it will not change.
Just real quick on some of that, one of the first things I did was work with Mr. Barnes here. I learned to fly fish with my grandpa and great grandfather on one of these rivers, as well as one of the Upper Peninsula. We use these trails. We ride. My family does. We snowmobile on these trails. We ride throughout, the entire complex. We're out here and about. My family, my daughter, we're on Lake Marguerite even before I got the thank you taxpayers for the home I get to live in right now. But before that, we've been camping up at the camp for 20 years. This is a community for us as well. With that being said, one of the first things I asked for with Tom is expanding trail use to start out in our 40 complex. Tom was very responsive, said, hey, the community of Lovells, we specifically talked about this community, would like that ability to connect some of those trails further this way. So we absolutely work that. It is a bit of a bureaucracy. It is a process. And we are looking at opening up more. The trick is every time you do that and open up different lands for different uses, the same process of my land use is another land use study of opening up trails and roads for recreational uses as well. So we are looking, just like he said, is the next round opening up around the 30 complex and then down to the South Camp, because like he said, otherwise if it's not open, it's posted closed. And did I say that right? Yeah, if it's not posted open, then it's closed. So we're working through those process of expanding, because I enjoy those things as well. Again, minus please stay out of the fenced in areas, or if the roads are closed, they're closed for a reason. But I'm all for opening more of those lands up because I enjoy those trails and those things with my family as well. So we absolutely are looking to open more of those. Thank you.
I know it is 7 o'clock, it's a 90-minute meeting, but I said there's 3 more people in line and they will take these 3 people and then we'll call it a night.
Hello everybody, my name is Monty Bolus. I live over in Frederick Township on the Manistee River. I waited to speak last to give everybody in your community an opportunity to speak. What I wanted to tell you is we are being misled. We're being misled. That's a strong statement and it's inflammatory, but we're being misled. Sure. We have a group right now that's started off 3.5 weeks ago with 100 people. We're up to like 2,500 now. It's called Camp Grayling Expansion. Camp Grayling Expansion. And it's a Facebook group. You can go to that group and find out a lot of good information. There's a lot of opinions, but there's also some factual information. There is no such thing, no disrespect to you, as news media anymore. There is no investigative journalism anymore. So it's up to us to do our own investigating. I want to tell you on our website, our group site, Camp Grayling Expansion, multiple people, maybe 100 by now, have brought up an article. It's in D Business Magazine. And in that magazine, the colonel and another high-ranking official from Camp Grayling in 2020 formed a joint unit of all 4 National Guard bases here, and they did that for the purpose of recruiting the private sector to come up here and test new technologies and new products, weapons. What I want to tell you is nothing is an accident. For instance, we've all heard multiple times up here, both gentlemen say that they're not going to close any trails down or close any hunting land down. If you go to the DNR site itself, it says on the DNR site that the property that they're talking about taking over will be closed down from time to time. So that's a contradiction right there. Here's another contradiction. Who should be better than drawing a map than the military and the DNR? Yet the map that's online for us to look at is horrible. It's horrible. The average human being couldn't make sense of it. There's not even roads on the map. That wasn't done by accident. You know what else wasn't done by accident? It wasn't done by accident when this started back in 2020 to bring this to the public's attention in roughly May of this year. It was done on purpose to limit the amount of time that we have to respond to this. So, and I'm as pro-military as anybody here, but I appeal to your sense of reason. Nobody needs 162,000 additional acres, which is 253 square miles, to fly drones and do cyber technology. Nobody needs that land. There has to be another reason. One more thing I want to tell you, it's very important. Yes, ma'am. There's an original map. On that original map that is no longer available to the public, it showed multiple new launch sites for this property that they're trying to take over. It's not on the map anymore. They say the reason it's not on the map anymore is because the technology's become obsolete in the last 4 months. I'm out of time. I don't want to cut into your time. Camp Grayling Expansion, please visit our site. Thank you.
everybody. My name's Mike Dormeyer. I live here in Lovells Township on KP Lake. My question would be, why Camp Grayling? Every guard unit has a habitual training relationship with some training facility. Could be Camp Dodge, could be Camp Shelby, could be Fort Irwin, could be anywhere, right? Why Camp Grayling? Right? I mean, they could go somewhere else. Who's here right now? West Virginia, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio. They come here. Why can't they go somewhere else? Right? Why does it have to expand here? I mean, that's my first question. The R&D portion, I know why they want to do that, because it's bottlenecked at Aberdeen Proving Grounds. Camp Grayling can shortcut that. They get all that business up here. It's money coming in. I don't think anybody thinks that's a secret. Anyways, why Camp Grayling? That's what I'd say. There's all kinds of facilities out there.
I think that's a great question, why Camp Grayling? And that same question has just been posed, not specifically on Camp Grayling, but to the Secretary of the Army and the Secretary of the Air Force by Congress, specifically looking at, they see these same threats as we do, right? They get those briefings and all those other things, and they see the challenges that we're trying to get after. So both of those secretaries have been tasked to look at all of the training installations throughout the continental United States and look at who has the capabilities to get after all domain training simultaneously in a four-season environment. And so when you look at those bases and you look at the different bases throughout our country, there's for me, great community pride that Camp Grayling really stands out. We have temperatures that get 30 below zero in the wintertime. We have areas that are wooded and rolling hills and replicate things that you see in Eastern Europe and other locations. When you look at Fort Irwin, it's all desert. And several of our training installations are, of course, out in the Southwest, and they just look all desert. This is a unique place, and we have great pride of all the workers out at the base too. Enjoy living and recreating in the same spaces that you all do, of course. But there are some unique characteristics when tying in together all of those domains. When you talk about a restricted airspace, we have the second largest use of military airspace in the nation, 17,000 square miles that extends all the way over Lake Huron to the border of Canada, if you will. We have those capabilities with Lake Huron to bring in sea assets and the Marines to do amphibious assaults and different things. So tying in, when I started the brief with all the domains simultaneously and be able to train in that, and even when you look at different active duty bases, they have full-time troops there. So how do they train and bring in an exercise with all those different compos that I mentioned, for example, on our Northern Strike exercise, when they're full of active duty troops? So they're specifically looking at National Guard training facilities that have rotational units, so when they do those exercises, they can bring in those partners and get after all those domains. So why Camp Grayling? We stand out from the land of what DoD is looking at as one of those few places that could provide that type of training. So developing our exercise, developing those things, getting out, replicating those distances and other things is, I think, a fair question, because there are other military bases. There are military bases that are getting after factors of this. There are states that are working on technologies that will feed in to what we're working on here. But absolutely true. I think that's a fair question, and that's what we're trying to figure out.
Thank you, good evening. I'm Jim Knight from Bear Lake Township. Thank you to the good people of Lovells for hosting this meeting and allowing us to comment. Now, I have no questions for Tom Barnes or Colonel Myers, and thank you. After hearing answers for 3 meetings now and describing what may take place on the 162,000 acres, from you may not even know we're even there, no live firings and light military traffic. To you may not even see us because we're in camouflage. It kind of sounds like maybe a Boy Scout outing. And then there's the D-Business article that exposed a much bigger plan that awaits after the approval. And indeed, 9 and 10 Zach Wheaton over there that just left, he asked the colonel, is the 162,000 acres, will that be used by the defense contractors? And he said, no, but I wouldn't rule it out. No, I'll leave you to figure that out. And then and the credibility to some of these answers that we've been given is actually deceitful. And the credibility has been compromised. This proposal, which includes 2 magnificent watersheds, will now be at an incredible risk. Can we truly believe what we are being told? The thousands of property owners and those that recreate on the public land, be assured there isn't a potential hazard or contamination. The 12-month of training that would block access and have control whether we can plan to recreate. And for 2 weeks of the year, we can now deer hunt. How very nice of you. How very nice of you to allow us our traditions and right to hunt. This is clearly an infringement of our freedoms.
Let him go.
Yeah, she's just home. Thank you. We are taxpayers and purchase licenses and permits to recreate on our public land. This land grab describes the very word that it is. We have the right to use this land. We pay our share, and to impede us is a clear infringement of our freedoms. The governor needs to hear from us. Send emails and reach out to the media asking why the governor won't answer our questions. So let's not forget the drive and disgust that you and all of us feel as you cast your vote in November. Thank you.
127,000 is enough. Yep. Enough is enough.
Yep. Yep.
We're done with public comment, and we'll finish up with
So I just want to finish up here. The first thing I want to say is that my wink, wink, nudge, nudge worked very well, and that we were an exemplary meeting. The second thing I would like to say is that there was some words about the township board, but you heard that they took a stand today, and the stand was against the expansion. That's huge. The other thing I'd like to say is that on that expansion page for the Lovells expansion, there are almost 3,000 members on that page right now. So that's huge. The other thing I would like to say is that for us to make change, we have 3 ways of doing it. One is to show up, which you've done. The second is to do letter writing, which Gene and I did, and we're the ones that got the response from the governor who said it's a federal issue, and we're the ones who got the response from Stabenow, who said it was a state issue. So you tell me what we should do. And finally, you need to support our local organizations like the anglers and stuff. And that's what's going to get us through this. So thanks for showing up, and let's go forward.